May the 27th, 2020, the body of a young girl was found inside a church in Benin City, Edo State of Nigeria. She was laying in a pool of blood and she was partially clothed. She had been severely beaten with a fire extinguisher and had been assaulted right there inside the church. When she was found, she wasn't moving. Her pulse was really weak and she was hardly even breathing. Barely alive, she was rushed to the hospital, but 3 days later, she was dead. Her name was Vera Uwaila Umozuwa. Uwailas case, when it happened, sent shockwaves throughout the entire country. I mean, what barbaric set of human beings would follow an innocent young girl into a church to end her life in such a gruesome manner? What exactly had provoked this person or group of people to descend so low to the level of unleashing such barbaric violence on another human being? Was it lust or was it anger? I can't say it's hatred or envy. It still doesn't make any sense. Or maybe it's sadism or revenge or the desire to conquer and dominate, which seems to be more plausible in gender-based violence. These and many more questions were what everyone in Nigeria was asking when the news broke. Uwaila was only 22 years old and resided in Benin City, where she attended the Redeemed Christian Church of God. She loved God and hoped that one day she would become a minister of the gospel. At the same time, she was a student at the University of Benin studying microbiology, and she was just in her first year. Uwa, as she was popularly known, was seen entering the local Redeemed Christian Church of God near her home on this fateful day. This particular church is where she worships with her family, so she thought that she was safe, but that would be the last time that anyone would see her alive. A few hours later, Uwa is seen bludgeoned beyond recognition on the altar of the church. Who could have done this to Uwaila? Before I get into more details of this case, please subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. I would really appreciate if you do so. Uwaila was born in 1998 in Edo State. People who knew her said that she was a very obedient girl, very lovable, loved God, intelligent, and pretty smart. She was so beautiful inside and out. Her parents were very proud of her and her achievements and her drive at such a very young age. She was a devout Christian and was taking classes in theology in the hopes that she could become a minister of the gospel someday. She was also in the church choir and she was very involved, in a lot of church activities. The church was her sanctuary, in fact, her second home. Academically, Uwaila was an A student. She was studying microbiology at the University of Benin, like I said earlier. Coming from a strong niche community, everyone rooted for Uwaila. She was growing into this beautiful and amazing woman with a very bright future ahead of her, and they hoped that in the future she could impact her community in a very positive way. Now, in the way in 2020, schools were temporarily shut down, and that meant that a lot of students were idle with nothing to do. Well, Uwaila thought that she could utilize the time by studying her books, so when school reopened, she wouldn't be lagging behind. I mean, it took her like 5 years to be able to secure admission into a higher institution, so she wasn't going to joke around with her studies. Since all her family members were home at the time, her house was very noisy kind of, and there was so much distractions, it was almost impossible for her to study. So she decided to take her books to the church, which was near her home, and the place was also very quiet. Large gatherings too were shut down at this point in time, so the church wasn't operating per se, but she felt very safe inside that church. She never for once imagined that harm could befall her inside her safe place, but unfortunately, Uwaila was very wrong. On this day, Uwaila told her family she was headed to the church to study. The church was only 5 minutes walk away from her residence, and her family were very aware of her routine. She would get the keys to the church from the pastor and then head to the church. Whenever she was done, she would then return the key back to the pastor before coming back home. Her sister Judith would later confirm that Uwaila wasn't comfortable with the noisy house like I mentioned earlier. So she, preferred to go to the church. And on that particular day, she even borrowed her sister's dress to wear to church. Judith walked her to the gate of their home and they talked for a bit, and Uwaila promised not to be long. But that was the last time that anyone in her family would see her alive because she never returned back home. That afternoon, Uwaila's phone was going unanswered, but her family never imagined that something sinister had happened to her. Fast forward to that evening at about 7 p.m. thereabout, the church security guard resumed for his night shift. And everything seemed to be normal and very quiet as usual as he made his rounds around the church. But when he got into the church hall, what he saw shocked him. He saw a trail of red fluid that he followed, which led him to Uwaila laying pants down, partially dressed and motionless. He raised an alarm and immediately people came running to help. The pastors of the church were called upon, and the assistant pastor's wife called Uwaila's mother immediately to let her know that her daughter was found unconscious inside the church auditorium. Now, everyone was confused how this had happened inside the church. In fact, no one even made sense of what had just happened and what they were seeing. Uwaila was rushed to the University of Benin Teaching Hospital immediately, where doctors discovered the extent of her injuries. Her eyes were swollen shut, she had injuries to the sides of her head, and one particular injury on her forehead that was very huge. Plus, she was brutally assaulted. She had lost a great percentage of her vital body fluid and was in a great deal of pain. She had tears running down her eyes, yet she couldn't talk or speak to express what she was going through. She was in a very critical condition, and on the 30th of May, despite all what the doctors did to save her, she succumbed to her injuries. And just like that, it was the end of all what Uwaila had planned for her life. Her hard work, her sacrifices, her dreams all came to a crushing end. As for what happened that night inside her church, it will later come to light that when her attackers entered the church and they saw her, one of them started up a conversation with her to kind of like distract her, while the others struck her from behind with a stick. She didn't see the attack coming. She only just felt the blow and she fell to the ground. She immediately tried to get back up and to run or fight or maybe yell, but she never got the chance to do so as a fire extinguisher came crashing onto her head, leaving her dazed. Then vital fluids came rushing out of her wounds, draining her of any energy. As she lay there helpless, these sick individuals assaulted her while she drifted in and out of consciousness. When they were done with her, they just left her there like trash. The way this crime happened, it felt like it was just a crime of opportunity, and most likely Uwaila knew her attackers, and that was why she didn't feel threatened at the first time when she saw them enter the church. In addition, every weapon that was used in this crime scene came from that crime scene. So most likely the decision was made to attack Uwaila while they saw her alone and vulnerable inside the church. Well, that's what it looks like to the ordinary eye, but the story got even deeper than this. So when news broke of what happened to Uwaila, Nigerians were very enraged and angry. They wanted the police to find who had done this to this sweet girl who hadn't done anything to warrant this type of gruesome attack. Uwaila's family were devastated. In a video that surfaced online on social media, her father was heard saying, quote, "This was not a mistake. It was not a fault. It was not stubbornness for her to go to church to study. She had been going there for several years. She struggled for 5 years to gain admission into Uniben, and I was waiting to celebrate her admission." End quote. It was very heartbreaking to watch a father lament like that. I mean, what set of animals would be so godless to throw a girl into a church to unleash this type of cruel violence on her? When exactly did it become an offense for a student to seek a conducive space to read? How could this have happened inside the church, which was supposed to be a sacred place? Just how? Now, investigations began and authorities were able to leave fingerprints of the fire extinguisher and the wood that was used and left behind during the attack. But it would take about, I think, 4 months for the first arrest to be made. 6 individuals, 27 years old Nelson Ogbebo, 45 years old Tina Samuel, 24 years old Collins Uligbe, 45 years old Mary Ade, 31 years old Nosa Osaboyen, and Valentine Akato were arrested in connection with what had happened to Uwaila. Uwaila's cell phone had been traced to one of the guys called Nosa. He was taken in for questioning and he implicated Collins. He said he bought the phone from Collins. Then Collins was arrested and he gave up the names of the others. From here on, the story began to deepen. The arrested guys began to point accusing fingers at each other while limiting their own involvement in the crime. Collins was the more talkative of the arrested. He said that he was forced into swearing an oath before they went to attack Uwaila. He made it seem like they were contracted to do away with the young lady, yet he also made it to look like taking her life wasn't part of the arrangement. It was just confusing. His version was that when they all arrived at the church, about 5 of them went inside, while Nelson, Azubike, and Lucky, who were at large at the time of their arrest, stood guard at the entrance of the church to monitor the church. He started up a conversation with Uwaila, while another accomplice, in a bid to make Uwaila think she was safe, moved towards the altar as if he was praying. Then from behind, another accomplice hit Uwaila with a piece of 2x4 wood while she was being distracted. This Collins guy said it wasn't part of the plan to take her life, but he, in the same breath, admitted to finishing Uwaila off with the fire extinguisher when she fell, after which the others took turns assaulting her. He, however, denied partaking in the assault. He said they were contracted to do what they did to Uwaila by his landlord, a woman called Vera Uwaila, who was also arrested, but she had denied any involvement. Like I said, his testimony was kind of confusing. One minute he says they were contracted to do this, and then the next minute he says they didn't intend to take her life. Which one is the truth exactly? According to Collins, they were paid the sum of 1 million naira to commit the crime, and his share was supposed to be about 200,000 naira. But ultimately, he was never paid a dime because his accomplices swindled him out of the share, according to him. Now, according to him, Uwaila was supposed to be used for ritual purpose by Mary Ade to boost her business, an allegation that Mary Ade herself denied. The confession was kind of confusing, like I said, because it didn't point out why Uwaila was particularly chosen or why Mary Ade would want to mastermind an attack on Uwaila. The police themselves could not find any link between Mary Ade and Uwaila, so was everything Collins saying true, or he was fabricating part of his confession to draw attention from him? Mary Ade didn't seem like a woman rich enough to afford to pay 1 million naira to give anyone. She was wretched and struggling, so something most definitely wasn't adding up at the time. And even till this day, Nigerians believe that some of those who were paraded were innocent and that the police just wanted to close the case because of how much people were condemning the police for not getting Uwaila justice fast enough. Because there was really no actual evidence of the connection of some of the accused to this crime, except maybe people like Collins saying they were involved, or mere pointing of accusing fingers, or hearsay. Others actually believe that the police got the right people and everyone was waiting for the outcome of the trial. However, by October of 2020, the court would discharge Mary Ade, the alleged mastermind, for the lack of evidence. There's this part of the case I didn't want to talk about initially, but I will talk about it now anyways. Following what happened to Uwaila, there were some sick allegations and speculations that were being rumored at the time. I don't even know how or where this came from, but it was all over social media that she was dating 2 roommates at the same time, who then set her up to be attacked. Then there was also this other rumor that said she was pregnant for the pastor of the church where she was attacked, and that the pastor had arranged for the attack to take place to remove the pregnancy. The sad thing was that many people began to believe these stories, and that hurt Uwaila's family a lot. Authorities had to come out to state clearly that Uwaila was never pregnant at any point in time. Only then was the rumors laid to rest, but the damage that all of these had done to Uwaila's name was immense. She did everything right. She dressed decently. She loved God. She prayed hard, served him in truth and in spirit, studied hard, yet all of this befell her. She was murdered right where she found peace. And this fact is very devastating. Life is just not balanced no matter how you look at it. People should learn not to spread rumors when things like this happen. It's insane to want to taint the good name of a victim because someone somewhere thinks that for something bad like this to happen to someone, they must have been bad people or they deserved it because of something they did or something that they set in motion. It's a common habit everywhere that I've seen a lot in this true crime world, and it needs to stop. Another thing I noticed when this happened was that the authorities were trying to avoid talking about the assault part of this case. In fact, they avoided it like it didn't happen. The most they referred to it was as an inhumane assault instead of calling it exactly what it was. As a woman and as a Nigerian who had seen things like this happen to other women, it annoyed me a lot. Why were they trying to diminish the obvious? It just showed that they would rather investigate the murder aspect of the case and leave the assault part of it alone. It makes me wonder if Uwaila hadn't passed away, would they have even taken up the case at all? This case was a part of the spat of violence against young women in Nigeria that hasn't stopped even after Uwaila's case. Hashtag justice for Uwa began to trend when this happened, and a group of students marched to the police station in Benin City to protest and speak up against gender-based violence in Nigeria. Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari called what happened to Uwaila barbaric in a tweet, and he said he expects the Nigerian police to speedily and diligently investigate the case to ensure justice. But to this day, we do not know exactly what had become of those arrested in connection with Uwaila's case. No one has been prosecuted and something has been stalling this case, which makes one to wonder, were Nigerians right after all? Were the arrests made just to shock everyone up back in 2020? Were those people even the real culprits? Well, that's pretty much it for today's case. It's really sad what they did to Uwaila, and we just hope that someday she gets the justice that she so much deserves. Thank you for staying with me to the very end. Please remember to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. And remember to stay safe at all times. And I will see you in the next video.